County City Council for September 13, 2021 is now in session. Roll call, please.
Council President, Mr. Arcaro,
Present.
Mr. Emery,
Here.
Mr. Goff,
Here.
Mrs. Lightford,
Here.
Mr. Moiseo,
Here.
City Manager, Mr. Hockaday,
Here.
County Inspector, Mr. Williams.
Here.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing afterwards for the invocation. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we ask your blessings on this council meeting and upon our community. Thank you for the blessing of living here, this place with beautiful scenery and great neighbors. We pray that you would help us all to work together to make it an even better community and to take advantage of the blessings that we have. Lord, when we disagree with each other, help us to do it respectfully and help us to pull together in the same direction. Father, we pray a special blessing of protection on our police and firemen, on our EMTs, on our nurses and doctors, all of whom have been stressed greatly lately. We pray for your protection of them, keep them safe, help them as they serve us. We pray, Lord, for the safety of our community and of our nation. We know that ultimately you're the one who is forever vigilant and the only one who can ultimately protect us completely. And so we place ourselves under your care. And we pray this in the name of Jesus, our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Kim. Move on to approval of the meeting minutes for August 23rd, 2021. Are there any alterations or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
The meeting minutes for August 23rd, 2021 have been approved. We have a special presentation this evening, which is the reading of the proclamation that we presented to the Colby family on their recent celebration of life of their father, Nick Colby. And Ms. O'Connell, if you could read that into the record, please.
A proclamation from the office of Conneaut City Council. Whereas Nicholas J. Colby was born on February 12th, 1922, and passed away on December 24th, 2020, at the age of 98. In the course of his long and fruitful life, Mr. Colby planted his roots in Conneaut, was married to Mary Colby for 60 years, and raised 7 children, including 1 police chief. Whereas Mr. Colby served in the United States Army from October 1942 to November 1945, beginning as a technical sergeant in the 359th Engineer Company and ending in the 776th Tank Destroyer Battalion Recon Company. Whereas during their time in Europe, the 359th Engineering Company laid more than 2,000 miles of pipeline and supported General Patton's tank advance through rough terrain strewn with mines and unexploded ordnance. Whereas during the winter of 1944, during the last-ditch German counterattack known as the Battle of the Bulge, Sergeant Colby and the 359th braved a surprise attack by a superior force as well as bitter cold weather. Whereas on VE Day, May 8th, 1945, Sergeant Colby was in Antwerp, Belgium, and later transferred into the 776th Tank Destroyer Battalion before receiving his honorable discharge from military service in November 1945. Whereas in 2020, Mr. Colby was awarded the French Legion d'Honneur, the French Legion of Honor, the highest honor that the French government can bestow upon someone who has done great deeds for France. Now, therefore, on behalf of a grateful community, the Council of the City of Conneaut honors Mr. Nicholas Colby for his great service and sacrifices to our country and the cause of liberty and freedom, and extends their deepest condolences and well wishes to his family.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to citizen comments. Signed in?
No.
Does council have any citizen comments? Okay, hearing none, move on to communications.
I have none this evening.
And does council have any communications? Okay, hearing none there either. We'll move on to reports for administration, beginning with the city manager, Mr. Hockaday.
Got to me faster than anticipated. Thank you. The first thing I wanted to bring up is Councilwoman Ledford are we rescheduled for the Wednesday Board of Education meeting, or there will be a reschedule?
Yes, yes, there's we are rescheduling to the 29th of September.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that
Yes,
so they
sorry
can
about that. I was
modify.
going to do it under miscellaneous, but no, that's
I
good.
didn't want to forget because
No,
it's
you're
happened to
right.
me
Yes.
before.
So there's no joint Board of Education meeting this Wednesday, originally scheduled. It is now changed to the 29th at 6 PM.
Thank you.
Yes.
We had a couple nice things happen since our last regular council meeting. We celebrated a ribbon cutting with Root Down, which is the coffee shop up in the Port District there. Wonderful little coffee shop. It's got a lot of really nice little rooms inside. They feature some work from local artisans. I believe it's all for sale. They don't take any commission. It's Mike Morgan and crew has done a wonderful job introducing that new business. They have several phases within the building that are kind of yet to come pieces. Wish them luck. It's really nice to have a really quality coffee shop in town too. That's a true benefit to the community. So the other thing that we celebrated was the Pacesetter Award for the Conneaut Port. And I'll explain that a little bit. Ports are measured by inbound and outbound tonnage. In this case, the U.S. Department of Transportation's St. Lawrence Seaway group, the Development Corporation, they measure tonnage through the canals that go in and out of the Atlantic Ocean passage. And the Conneaut Port was recognized for its increase in tonnage. It was one of the 8 highest increases in tonnage amongst all ports on the Great Lakes, with over 100% increase year over year. It was a significant export operation related to some taconite that was being shipped to the Ukraine and Japan vis-a-vis the Conneaut Port. Pretty significant movement. Certainly a lot of credit to Canadian National and their team. Now retired Bill Klein was the manager of the port in their Great Lakes system for Canadian National. So Bill Klein, obviously a local Northeast Ohio talent. Bill's been with the port for almost 35 years. He retired this past April. Very thankful that Bill has now joined the Conneaut Port Authority in his retirement and continues to contribute to the community. So I appreciate that. And certainly the leadership of the port chairman, George Peterson. We were joined by Craig Middlebrook, from the U.S. Department of Transportation's St. Lawrence Seaway Development Corporation to recognize and celebrate the Port of Conneaut for its achievement. And that is the first time this port has ever been recognized with that award. So that's a significant step and continues to elevate the profile of our port nationally. So those are all good things. Really appreciate the collaboration and collaborative relationships that we've enjoyed, not only with Canadian National, but the Conneaut Port Authority as well. And hopefully it's an indication of all the great things to come in the future. Ironically, in the same month, we were also visited by the Ohio Lake Erie Commission that was hosted at Kent State. It revolves around the Ohio Great Lakes ports. So Ashtabula was the host in this quarterly meeting, and they held it at Kent State. One of the things that they announced were the Great Lakes, or the Ohio Lake Erie Commission's annual photography contest. I'd be remiss without recognizing Mr. Rich McBride. who was awarded the runner-up status in this year's contest, as well as he had another honorable mention submission. Rich McBride is truly a Conneaut treasure, and he does, him and his wife are photographers, and they do some tremendous work. I would encourage anybody that runs into Mr. McBride, if you ever get a chance to buy a piece of his art or photography, it's awesome. But he does actually host a collection of his artwork here at City Hall in the stairwell as you come up and down. I don't know that most people know this, but Mr. McBride actually switches those out seasonally for us. A lot of photography on our website is actually his, and he's always donated it to the city at no cost for its use. He's a tremendous photographer, and really right here is some of his work as well. Does really phenomenal work in capturing the life and beauty of Lake Erie and Conneaut. And I think we'll be forever grateful for Rich and his wonderful talent and sharing it with so many. Another thing that I want to touch on, we did also host Congressman Dave Joyce and the Growth Partnership Executive Quarterly Meeting here at Conneaut Township Park. I want to thank the Conneaut Township Park for scheduling that and hosting that wonderful lunch venue. We were able to be outdoors and appropriately distanced while we gathered. So that was an excellent opportunity to showcase all Conneaut has to offer. So I thank the Township Park for coordinating that for us. Lastly, I want to touch on the OPWC Integrating Committee. We had a preliminary award that moved all the way through the Integrating Committee meeting this morning. Conneaut will be requested for a final app, and so long as we're able to fill that out appropriately, that award for the $335,000 towards the Broad Street reconstruction project will move forward. So those final applications will be due in November, and that final slate will be approved by the Integrating Committee to be sent down to Columbus in November, assuming everybody gets all their paperwork in. So that's another good positive thing. Now, some less positive stuff. The last time we met, we had a total of 6 active COVID cases here, according to the Conneaut Health Department. We are now at 20 active cases, 2 active hospitalizations, and we did have 1 death over the weekend. 3 of our total cases are from the school, with only another 6 quarantined. I want to bring up 2 items there. One, my understanding is the person who passed was not in their 60s, 70s, 80s. They were in their 40s. And I'd once again just remind people, vaccination matters. It's not a guarantee, but it certainly increases your odds. Protect yourself, protect the loved ones around you. And the other point that I want to make is about the schools. The reason why the Conneaut area school system is able to continue to operate so normally is because with those 3 cases, there were only about half a dozen quarantines related to those 3 cases because of the masking policy. So without that, there would be broader, more sweeping quarantines throughout the school would be incredibly disruptive. So I just want to bring those things to light so that everybody can see them. It's not a good situation. Nobody wants to be in this situation. I don't think anybody's happy about it, but we do the things that we can do continually to reduce the effects of it. Couple other things I want to jump down to. Route 20 West full reconstruction base and intermediate course is being wrapped up. As soon as they finish that, they're going to flip sides. The traffic will remain eastbound. The traffic will always remain in the direction towards the hospital. It should alleviate some of the driveway access issues that we've seen recently. When the contractor and some of their subcontractors were in there, we did have a couple of complaints for which we directed those to ODOT for resolution with the contractor. I would encourage anybody that is having any kind of issues in that project site, whether it's access or anything like that, they're required to provide you access at all times. So there might be a portion of time where there's 15 or 20 minutes where the paver box is literally sitting in front of your driveway. That's understandable. But anything over an hour, you probably need to talk to ODOT. And if you don't want to talk to ODOT directly, please call my office and I will talk to ODOT on your behalf. There's no reason anybody should bear any kind of significant access issue for whether they're getting prescription drugs or doctor's appointments or whatever the case may be, please call my office if you're having a significant access issue where it is inaccessible for any lengthy period of time. And we'll make sure that there is some kind of resolution and that somebody from ODOT reaches out to you directly. So I wanted to put that out there because we had 2 such issues in this last week. And I want to make sure that those people feel comfortable enough to contact their council person, contact my office, whomever, so we can contact ODOT and get it straightened out for them. The culvert repair, which is up on Lake Road, is substantially complete. There are still some final punch out issues that they have to do there, including grass seeding. There's some spillway protection that they're going to be installing there to prevent any kind of substantial erosion. I did have a couple questions from some folks, so ODOT was able to provide satisfactory answers to those. We still have 2 pending demolitions. One is 290 Buffalo, and the other is, I want to say it's 150 16th Street. That one may have even come down today. The excavator's been on site, but the 290 Buffalo is the next one to come down. 970 Harbor has been asbestos tested. I'm not going to steal Mr. Smith's thunder about some progress with the state of Ohio, so I'll let him cover that during his portion. And then Public Works has done some nice crack filling work on Route 7, but they've also been bogged down in some equipment repair as well. Both of those pieces of equipment that we discussed at our Public Works session, including the boom mower and the street sweeper, are back in operation this week. So they're out and getting that done. I know we're going to have a couple of rain days this week, but any days it's not raining, we're going to be focused on crack sealing the balance of Route 7. We talked about the importance of doing that. Without taking any more of your time, I think that's the high points. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Are we still on schedule for 2-way traffic on the west end? End
It-
of October?
Yes, as far it,
That's what they're
so,
saying.
you know, they have not extended their schedule at all. So contractually, they're still obliged to deliver that at the end of October.
Any other questions for the city manager?
Well, I just, like, today I asked you about Chestnut Street, so if you want to maybe just tell the audience. you
Sure.
know.
So they're still looking, I mean, tentatively, we're hoping it's going to be before the end of October, maybe even the middle of October. Sanitary sewer line is near complete on install there. So it's the water line is the balance of the project there. So there were several delays at the beginning of the project, as well as a significant issue with engineering that had to be resolved on the fly. So that's delayed that project to an extent, but they're looking at final delivery middle to end of October.
I have, Mr. Kerr, I have one more question. I think I might as well bring it up now. Just out of curiosity, Mr. Hockaday, on the RFP for the 221 building rehab, the capital bill, I believe local government infrastructure is an allowable expenditure. Are we going to look at that?
We can ask for,
Yep.
we'll always ask. I have some other opportunities that are more appropriate for that, but state capital dollars, you know, I know they're frequently pointed at as, hey, yeah, there's lots of state capital dollars out there. Truth be told, discretionary state capital dollars are usually divided on a countywide basis. So traditionally, any county, any one of the 88 can count on about $1.3 million in total discretionary funding through a state capital bill. Anything above $1.3 million would be considered fairly extraordinary. So, you know, I just want to temper everybody's expectations on how those monies get divided and what projects they go to. Frequently, they target what are considered otherwise unfundable areas. They target things like parks, park development, park redevelopment, park acquisition, especially park apparatus, a lot of nature-based activities or things that can't otherwise be funded through some other program through the state of Ohio. So I would tell people to review last rounds of state capital awards to get a good kind of idea of the form factor that gets funded at the state level. But yes, we always apply. Every
And
year.
I thought based on, and again, I didn't read all the allowable expenditures, but with some I saw. So let's say if we are going to rent a space to, let's say a mental health provider
Mhm.
or drug dependency provider, that sort of thing, that might be a covered cost. But again, because it is a public building, it might be an unallowable cost. So I mean, there's just something I just thought, if there's something we're able to look
Yeah.
at
And I'm
to offset any costs.
and off the record, not to show my grant making cards. I'll share with you the couple funds and lines that I'm looking at that would support that same project. But that's also, I would have to vet that one a little more thoroughly.
Yeah.
To make sure it's eligible.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the city manager?
Mr. Hockaday, did we get Dorman Road scheduled?
It's not fully scheduled yet. I know I don't have the final day that they're going to be out here. We're talking with them, but the biggest thing is there were a couple soft spots that we wanted to address. And then there's the apron portion between Gateway and Dorman, because there's slight elevation difference there. That needs to be addressed with asphalt first prior to the chip seal, mastic seal
Okay.
going down. Okay. So that is tentatively scheduled for as early as next week on that portion. So it will be sometime after
Okay.
that. The selection of the mastic piece is based on its temperature acceptability. So, we have a little bit of time, not a ton, but we have a little bit of time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Now move on to Finance Director, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. One of the ordinances or resolutions you're considering tonight is ordinance 8021, the resolution accepting the amounts and rates is determined by the Budget Commission. I know the format that they give is hard to read. It's small and it's kind of, broken up. I try to provide the summary, which is basically what we submit to the county as far as the tax budget. So when we submit this to the county, they review it and then they send it back to us after it's reviewed. And then we pass an ordinance to accept those rates and amounts as determined by the County Budget Commission. So I just wanted to quickly go over that summary again. The amounts are what we submitted to the county. If you look at that, we're looking at estimated receipts from the millage, outside millage of 1.92 million. We're looking at inside millage of 692,000 for a total of collections of about 2.6 million. That is after the factoring in the delinquency, and that is the effective millage, not the full millage. We have outside mills of 10.75, inside mills of 3.63. The effective millage is 13.70. The next page is the official certificate of estimated resources from the county. This is based upon the tax budget. If you look at that 2.6 million figure, that's what's on the front of that summary sheet that I provided you. You can see it broken down by fund as far as general fund and the levies. So we're looking at 2,613,000. They also provided us with the estimated local government that they intend to receive next year. For the county, it's $2,686,370. These are all estimates. They receive 1.66% of all the revenue from the state general fund. And those funds are distributed. On the next page, you'll see Conneaut gets 14.125% of that. The estimate is 379,000 for our local government for next year. I gave you a copy of what we collected the past 3 years, but last year we collected 404,000. But if you look at the very last page, only 354,000 of that was from the county. I wrote on there 49,579. That is actually directly remitted from the state. So that gets directly remitted into our Star Ohio account. So we collected 404, but the 354 came from the county. Their estimate is 379. So we're looking at about another 25,000 increase over last year. It could be more, it could be less. As I said, they're just estimates. And I was going to print out this report. I just didn't have time, but I thought I'd go over it and I'll give you a written copy. I know Mr. Mosio at our work session had discussed income tax. So I just briefly wanted to remind council where we were at with income tax last year. So we were comparing 2020 to 2019. We saw a decreased collection of 385,000. 214,000 of that 385,000 was a direct result of business profit decline. Business profits only represent about 12% of collections in the city, but they represented 55% of the decline. So the vast majority came from there. Then we went down to individual. That was an increase or a decrease of 18%, or about 90,000. And then withholding, which represents the largest bulk of our collections, that was only down about 3.5%. But the total for the year was 385,000. This year, if in comparison from 2020 to 2021, we've actually seen an increase of 139,000. But remember, 2020 was artificially, or depressed from the COVID. But we're up about 7.15%. A more fair comparison would be to compare 2019 with 2021. So as I said, we're up 139,000, but if you compare 2019, which was our last really good year, we're still down about 153,000. 47% of that, or 125,000, it continues to be from business profits, which is expected. About 16% is from individual, and withholding is actually up 2.92% over 2019, or about 45,000. It's not a significant amount, but it's still an increase. So that's one positive sign as far as income tax collections, but we still are down significantly from 153,000, right? But I'll print these out in a more readable format for you. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. Any questions for the finance director? Move on to the law director, Mr. Smith.
There isn't that much thunder to report. But the reference that Mr. Hockaday made to 970 Harbor Street was one of the properties we obtained a judgment for condemnation 3 years ago, I believe. And we've been talking with the state tax office, and they have provided a pathway to releasing the liens on that property. So we have the path. We need to do a title search. We need to do a deed, and then we can start accumulating the releases. So that'll be a good start. Second thing is that we've kind of started our fall code enforcement offensive, and we have targeted 8 properties. And we'll be giving you monthly reports on these 8 properties. This is a coordinated effort between my office, the Planning and Zoning Office, the Police Department, and the Health Department. And the address is our 443 Buffalo Street. The next one is 597 Baltic Street, which we did file a civil complaint on for demolition in July, and we have a default hearing set up now for September 20th. 799 Buffalo is an annual favorite, and we are in the process of putting together some things on that, and I think there's an effort to go back into the house on the 15th. So a lot of these have been administrative search warrants and working with the property owners and that type of thing. 562 Broad Street, I know, is another favorite. They've been issued violation notices, and we can begin to take civil action against them on September 20th, assuming that they don't do anything in the meantime. 410 Senator Street has popped up on our radar, and we'll be dealing with that one. Another favorite is 295 Depot Street. And the last one we're starting to deal with is 251 Clay Street, which has been sold to a new individual. And the Planning and Zoning Office has already notified that individual of the problems and what is expected of them to avoid tangling with the city. There's an 8th one here. I forgot the address, but this is one where the landowner is cooperating, the tenant's been evicted, and the property is being cleaned up. So the preference here is all rehabilitation and reuse, but in those situations where it's too far gone, we will pursue the demolition. So save some money for that. I think that's it. There's been some negotiations on some economic development contracts that are progressing. And the new assistant is doing a great job, and we're moving criminal cases to pretty well. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the law director? If now we'll move on to committee reports.
I have one report. Public Works Committee met last Wednesday, September 8th. I didn't bring all my notes with me this evening, but we discussed, and I think Mr. Williams had sent us the equipment list in the email this evening, but we discussed equipment needs, age of the equipment. Are they prepared and ready to go for the fall and winter seasons with snow plowing, mowing and trimming, image of the city, that sort of thing. And I think we have some issues with older mowing equipment, so we will be able to address those. I think overall it was a good meeting. We had good communication in trying to determine the needs of the Public Works Department, which number one is manpower. They definitely need manpower. So, but again, my concern was, do we have the equipment? Is it ready to go? And it appears that it is, but we do have some infrastructure and some capital things such as vehicles and that we need to look at. So as far as replacing, repairing, and so on and so forth, which I think justifies some of their requests, increases in purchase orders and repairs and so on and so forth. So I believe that list, I'm sorry, Mr. Williams, that was sent by Janet. So
Get them mixed up all the time.
I shouldn't.
Okay, anybody else for a committee report? Okay, if not, liaison reports. Okay, hearing none. Move on to our ordinances and resolutions for this evening, and we'll begin with ordinance 8820, which is on the table and remain on the table. Brings us to our third reading of ordinances, which we have ordinance 7221.
An ordinance to create trash hauling districts within the city of Conneaut is set forth in section 1 below and not declaring an emergency.
Okay, as you all know, I sent out a late arriving email from one of our local haulers requesting that we consider changing one of the zone boundaries, which is zone 1. I did receive a response from Mrs. Ledford, have not received from anybody else yet. So we can't act on this without looking at that. So you guys had a chance to consider that?
I had a chance to look
Zone
at it
change?
just prior to the meeting here. But it was zone 1. I think moving the dividing line would not be
The
the
railroad.
railroad tracks would not
like
be
it
the
to move
tracks.
To Route 20.
Okay. I don't, me personally.
I couldn't think of any downside to it, but doesn't mean someone else might not think of something. I couldn't think of why if that'll help make things easier.
Yeah, I didn't think of a reason for it not to be that. I suppose.
No issue.
Okay, so we would have to amend that ordinance, so this will remain in third reading at this point.
Actually, you'll need to table it.
Table it. Okay,
I'll make a motion to table ordinance 72-21.
okay. Okay, ordinance 72.
Excuse me, there needs to be a vote on that.
Pardon?
You need to vote. You need a vote to table it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 7221 has been tabled. Move on to our second reading ordinances. And we have one to consider. 7821.
An ordinance to amend section 909.60 and 909.62 of the City of Conneaut Codified Ordinances Sidewalk Repair Reimbursement Program and not declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hawkins.
This modifies a couple of the criteria for this. It does allow for both individuals, nonprofits, other businesses to potentially apply for this. It also removes some of the maximum limitations on their application amount. It is not a very big fund. It's only about $5,000 a year is what council generally appropriates. And they're entitled to request reimbursement of the cost of the material, not the finishing or excavation. So this has been a good program. We've had a couple of various requests around some improvements around the city that kind of instigated this minor revision to this ordinance.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. Moiseo, you had some concerns of all of your.
Yeah,
concerns?
and I read that over. I prefer just to have it go 3 readings, so I'd move it to third reading, and then if there's any public comment, then go from there.
Okay, ordinance 7821 has been moved to a third reading. Move on to our first reading of ordinances and resolutions for this evening. We have 10 to consider. And we'll begin with resolution 8021.
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates is determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
Okay, you heard Mr. Williams' explanation on this. Are there any other questions or comments? Mr. Smith, point of order, since this is a resolution. Are we able to act on it?
No,
Okay,
no, without having 6 votes to suspend the 3 reading rule.
okay, with that, resolution 8021 is moved to a second reading. Okay, move on to ordinance 8121.
An ordinance to create Fund 261 ARPA for the purpose of accounting for the receipts and disbursements related to the American Rescue Plan Act.
Mr. Williams, would you like to say anything?
This is for the federal dollars that we're intending on receiving. We haven't received them yet, but I anticipate that we'll receive them very soon. We're going to get about $656,000 this year. And I believe a likewise amount next year, but we need to set up a separate fund. And then council at some point will have to decide how they want to use that. And then we can establish appropriation lines. But I did certify this revenue to the county.
Okay. Ordinance 8121 will be moved to a second reading as well. Move on to ordinance 8221.
An ordinance to amend the 2021 budget through appropriations and fund and interfund transfers attached here to and marked Exhibit A.
Williams again.
We had discussed some of these items at our work sessions, some we did not. But the purchase of police vehicles, that's just a reappropriation of cash evidence seizures. Should they decide to purchase a used vehicle for the detective, there's $17,000 in there and available. There's two new line items. It's EMS supplies and postage. And over the years, the EMS department, the billing department has changed over the years. Before we had it through a special revenue fund over at Station 3. Then it was incorporated into the general fund, but they were still over there. And part of it was being financed through the finance office as far as the billing clerk. But then some of the supplies and postage and things of that nature were spent out of the fire department. The problem was we were using line items that were being used for the fire department as well. So I thought a better way to track these expenditures and not confuse them with Station 1's is to create separate line items. So there's $950 to be appropriated in the fire department supplies for the EMS mailing, and then fire department postage for the EMS mailing. So that's $1,500. And that way it separates and we don't have any confusion as to what these expenditures were for. And then we discussed making the planning and zoning position a full-time position. We're going to need 13,000 in increase in wages, 2,600 in benefits, and 3,000 in health insurance to cover that for the remainder of the year. I mean, from now until December 31. Economic development and contingencies, I'm increasing those by 5,000 each. Contingencies are for, unanticipated expenditures. For example, we had trees that had to come down or be taken down at the Railroad Museum. That was about $3,000. So that's what these line items are for things that weren't necessarily budgeted, but we need them. I don't have anything specific for that 5,000 at this point, but I don't want to have to come back to council again. If there's something, we'll use that for. So, and then economic development, that was an additional amount needed. And then for the Public Works Department, there's a severance line item. We have a person that's going to be retiring. We have about 6,000 in there. We're going to need an additional 11,000. We were able to reduce the engineering services to offset the increases that we're requesting. Mr. DeBell had indicated he needs some additional funding for repair and maintenance of vehicles, equipment, miscellaneous and traffic lights. So we're looking at increases in the Public Works Department of 27,000. We're able to decrease it by 14,000. And we actually have a decrease in appropriations by 13,000. That decrease, should Mr. DeBell come back and say, hey, one of the plow trucks blew an engine or something like that, we'll have that additional 13,000 to reappropriate at a later date. The reserve fund, utilities, city hall, we need some additional there. And then again, contingencies in the reserve fund, and then county audited deductions. This is the special energy district that we have. There were county audited deductions that have to be paid for part of the collection of those funds for the ESID. And so I had to appropriate for that. There's a grand total, including that decrease in the Public Works Department. The grand total increase is $39,760.94.
Any questions for Mr. Williams?
The only thing that wasn't included in the public works thing, and I bring this up because it was discussed in the committee meeting, was the retirement. Right now, we have not projected replacement of that individual before their actual retirement date, which is the end of this calendar year. So if council desires me to go ahead and replace that person, we would have to additionally appropriate on top of that to cover the salary of the person that would be there today while that other person is still technically on the books. So you don't have to give me direction today, but we do need a final answer on that. And just know that if we want to go in that direction, that council would have to make an additional appropriation to what Mr. Williams just reviewed.
Remind me of the dates again.
So
When that person is
He-
actually
he-
not
He
there.
has enough vacation. He's not there as of last week.
Oh,
and-
of last week.
And,
Okay.
and then, obviously has enough vacation time to take him through the end of the year.
Right, okay.
We do have 3 new employees this year in Public
Right.
Works, and we talked about, snowplow training and some other things that we're
Right.
kind of going to do as a group. So, there would be some advantage to having that new hire join in that, so we can train them as a group. Plus just the overall staffing and manpower issue that we've, beat to death.
Mr. Williams, when, as far as the general fund, I know there was, we were talking to some other personnel moves, and it was about $146,000.
Correct.
Would this buyout be included in that, or that would be a separate?
No, this is a separate fund.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that's what I thought, but
Yeah, the Public Works Department is a special revenue fund that's coming out of the general fund.
okay.
Okay, Mr. Williams, then you and Mr. Hockaday will have a projection for our next work
We
session.
do have some additional funding in the recreation fund, the Parks and Recreation Fund, because a substantial amount of the Public Works employees' time is spent mowing parks. There's some additional appropriation, salary appropriation that I have not used. Depending on when this person is hired, we may not have to amend it. We might be able to charge it there if that's what you want to do. Or if you want to include it in the Public Works Department, we can, because it's all, the Public Works is, street department, cemetery, parks. So,
And I would budget a minimum of 30 days from the date that you say, yeah, go ahead to advertise, get resumes, because it has to go through, it's a union position. So it's posted for 7 days internally first, assuming nobody takes it, then it goes to an outside posting. Then there's interviews, then there's pre-employment background. And, that's assuming you get outside candidates that are, so it can be a lengthy process. So it's not a flip of the switch kind of thing to get a new person onboarded. So I would budget a minimum of 30 days to onboard somebody. So our projection would be from, let's say the middle of October to the end of the year is what we'd be looking for, is the gap wage. And that would be a one-time kind of expenditure that we're overlapping somebody who's retired and a new employee. So next year it wouldn't increase the budget next year.
Okay, so if you could have those figures between the two of you, what your proposal is for the next work session.
And if that recreational fund would cover that, just
Okay.
whatever that comes out to be.
okay. Because I believe the person retiring, I budgeted for his health care through the end of the year. So the new person would take that. So I'm just, so I don't think we would have to amend that.
Okay,
The only thing is the appropriation line, but as I said, if you look on the reports that I sent yesterday under the appropriation report, I think it's 555-560-51-100. That's the appropriation line that I have not used, but it's for parks. But I use that line item in times where we're short in Public Works, because as I said, they spent an inordinate amount of time mowing parks. So it's an appropriate expenditure, but that would be the line item that I would use. If we don't have to amend it, then I would prefer not to put that expense, the additional burden on the street department and shift it to the Parks Department, but we'll see. We'll take a look at it.
Okay. Any other questions regarding ordinance 8221? Okay, ordinance 8221 will be moved to a second reading as well. Move on to ordinance 8321.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to award the bid and enter into contract with VEC Systems, Inc. for the canoe/kayak launch ramp on Welton Road, not to exceed a total of $60,200 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hockaday.
And it's fairly self-explanatory. I think we're ready to move forward to this. I know a couple of these in here are fairly time sensitive, which we can discuss at the end of the meeting here, is when we can potentially get back together to do some of this stuff. But this is one of those time sensitive pieces.
Okay. A ordinance 8321 will be moved to a second reading. Move on to ordinance 8421.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager pursuant to the guidelines adopted by ordinance number 06-16 to advertise for requests for proposals for design/build services for the 221 Broad Street addition and alterations project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hockaday.
So we've already been through the SOQ portion. We have 3 qualified contractors that we're looking at. This would be a request for proposal from only those 3 select qualified folks that have submitted. They will come up with a scope of services, architectural engineering, design and construction. Council is not obligated to accept any of them. So this is really kind of your quote unquote go out the bid piece. We reviewed that packet at the last work session in some great detail with Mr. Bill Gallagher from CT Consultants. So we're ready to take that next step.
Any questions or comments regarding this ordinance?
Is this time sensitive as well?
Yeah.
Okay, ordinance 84-21 has been moved to second reading. Move on to ordinance 85-21.
An ordinance to amend section 1 of ordinance number 21-04 to set the maximum rates of pay effective September 13th, 2021 for said positions is further described in section 1 below and not declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hockaday.
This is something we've talked about at great length, not only this year, but in previous years. And we've had a lot of turnover in the zoning office. Molly, the supervisor, is actually a split employee now between the law office and the zoning office. During COVID, we were down to 2 part-time employees for an entire year. Since then, we added Molly to assist with some of the caseload. There's a ton of volume there, which we've always known, and this would take one of the inspector positions from part-time to full-time. And I think we're looking at, John, correct me if I'm wrong here, a total wages contribution for the balance of this year in the order of $12,000-15,000 with wages and benefits.
Yeah, actually, probably 18.6.
Okay, thank you. So we did discuss this significantly at the last work session. I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Any questions regarding this ordinance?
Not a question, but we definitely need this position. I think we're all in agreement on that.
Any other comments on ordinance 85-21? Okay, ordinance 85-21 will be moved to a second reading as well. Move on to ordinance 86-21.
An ordinance strongly recommending those persons entering Conneaut City Hall to wear facial coverings regardless of vaccination status and declaring an emergency.
And Mr. Hockaday.
So we've addressed 2 of the areas that we can control. The schools obviously require masks for children in school during the day. Judge Irochi has issued an order for the courtroom, which is very difficult to socially distance or appropriately space and control who's coming and going in terms of vaccination status. So he's ordered masks in the courts. As far as City Hall for employees throughout the workday, they are required to wear masks in the public and common spaces as they move throughout the building. This only address those non-employees and non-court visitors to City Hall in terms of what's required in terms of a mask. Here, council has discussed and forwarded a strong recommendation for persons entering City Hall to wear masks.
Any questions or comments regarding this ordinance?
With the Delta variant, which is hypervariant, we need to do all we can to protect the public who visit City Hall. We are requiring school employees and visitors and students to wear wear masks regardless of vaccinations. So why wouldn't we, the city leaders, require that at City Hall? The vast majority of the people who come to City Hall are here to take care of business, and we have commissions that meet here giving their time, and we should protect them. These boards have citizens that attend for what reasons? I would like to see a total mask. If we change that, what has to happen, Kyle?
If you change what, the ordinance?
Or, yeah,
You'd have to make an amendment to the ordinance.
that's all, right?
You'd have to make an amendment to the ordinance.
Okay. I'd like to make an amendment to it.
An Amendment to require everyone
Mask.
coming into City Hall wearing a
Mask.
mask.
With the variant, the Delta variant, we have the numbers, we're starting to see an uptick. Sewers said it's there. The schools have it. We've had a fatality. I don't know if that's my opinion. You have these boards coming in. Some of them donate their time, don't get paid. And you could have somebody come right in and infect them.
Does the ordinance have to be tabled to make the amendment?
No.
Any other?
Didn't we have to do that to the trash one though?
Because it was already in third reading.
Gotcha. Sorry.
Any other questions or comments regarding this ordinance?
I'm in agreement with Rick. I feel like it's only right with the courts being mandatory and employees here. It only makes sense.
I'm not in total agreement with it myself, but to me, I'm okay either way. I'm not, it's not
Well,
worth fighting about it or anything,
Well,
but
that's the problem.
I just-
Somebody will fight about it.
yeah,
if you
I
leave
know.
it like-
I
like
just,
it
I
is.
just personally feel like knowing that we're all vaccinated, while we're in here,
The
don't feel
Delta
that it
variant,
doesn't
You could be a
necessarily.
carrier of the Delta variant.
Yeah, but we're all vaccinated
You still can
here.
get the Delta variant.
I
wherever
understand that, but
That's fine. Make that.
not to the severity of someone who's unvaccinated. All the people that are getting super sick, unless there's some underlying condition, are the people that are unvaccinated. So it's just, like I said, it's hard that we went through all of this, everybody pushed for vaccinations. And then I feel like we have to put ourselves out or do more for all the people who are choosing not to get vaccinated. So, and that just,
And Tammy, I'd have to agree with
it
you.
just makes me mad. It's like, get your vaccinations and we wouldn't be in this situation.
They won't.
So that's my hiccup on it. And I know it might sound silly to some people, but that's all. But like I said, if the majority of you guys want to do that, I'm totally okay with it. I'm fine with
So
it.
here's the issue, and I'm not in agreement with it. So right now, between 8/31 and 9/7/21, this is from the Asheville County Health Department, Ohio Department of Health. So we had 136 cases. Current hospitalized were 14 at that time. Cumulative cases was 1. Symptoms resolve out of those was 67. 67 divided 130 by 136 is 49%. There's been no deaths as of that time. Conneaut did not report at that time, and I think there was allegedly 7 reported cases. And again, Ashtabula County still remains 88 out of 88 counties per 100,000 population over a 2-week period. So the numbers really don't, if we look at it that way, really don't kind of say what we need to do. However, I think it should be personal choice if you want to wear a mask or not. Again, we're saying whether vaccinated or not, I think that's fair enough. There are schools in Ashtabula County that have no masks policy. The children aren't wearing masks. So that is just indicative for the city of Conneaut right at this point, which that could change. But I think we need to look at this and not make it a requirement, but we review it, because if things do progress and the numbers do justify making something mandatory, then we have to look at it. Here is the big problem. We cannot enforce this because there is no state regulations anymore. There is no guidelines. There is no orders anymore, and it cannot be enforced. And that's another issue. How do we enforce it? And then are we looking at any type of civil repercussions from someone if we enact something like this, potentially? So I don't know if it's justified at this point. I don't want to say we need to overreact, but we don't want to underreact either. So it's a difficult subject. But again, more people recover than don't, even with the variant. And we're going to have variant upon variant upon variant. So we have to learn to live with it, and we need to move on. And that's all there is to it. It's not going to end. The flu hasn't ended. This is not going to end. And that's just my opinion, and that's how I feel. Kyle can probably articulate more as far as the enforcement end of this, but you're not going to be able to do it.
Is that where I say that I think you can enforce it?
You said, I don't know what you said, if you said can or can't.
I
The issue is,
There are a number of communities throughout the state of Ohio, including Athens, a number of other places that I'm getting in my emails that are coming up with mandatory masks.
okay, so how are they, what are they recommending as far as enforcement?
Minor misdemeanor,
A minor misdemeanor, so we're going to fine people.
if that's what you want to do.
I don't want to do that.
No, that's
I
ridiculous.
just don't want to do that.
I mean, come on.
I'm not.
We have no health orders even backing us
not
up.
making any recommendations.
I understand. I'm just saying enforcement
I'm
wise,
just answering the
as an
question.
ordinance, sure, we can jail somebody for 30 days on a minor misdemeanor,
No,
you know,
4th degree misdemeanor.
well, 4th degree.
You spent too much time doing felonies.
Right. But again,
So they would receive a citation as a
right.
minor misdemeanor.
Or what is it if it's an ag disorderly, if they refuse?
That's a 4th degree misdemeanor.
30 days, then I was correct, wasn't I?
So you're saying somebody can walk right in, not have a COVID shot and do what they want.
Right, it would be,
So
it would be voluntary.
so that's my point.
We are recommending.
That's
or
my
we're
point.
strongly
Well, and
That's
another,
my
and
point.
another thing that's happened is that the courts have already done this, and there's a big sign on the door saying you must have a mask to come into City Hall without us approving anything. So we're kind of in a spot now, because I understand, when we talked about this at the work session, when we said strongly recommend, well, then now if we have something that says strongly recommend, but then the courts want to do this, then now we're kind of, we're saying two different things here. So, I really wish we had talked about this before stuff had gotten enacted, so we could really hash it all through together. I think that would have been a smart moves, but now we're in the place that we are, and some of us feel differently about stuff, but maybe a solution would be, we can't vote on it anyway. So maybe gonna have to move it or table it. We could maybe have an amendment ready to go. And then if the numbers warrant it, or the health department, says, yeah, this is starting to get worse, then we could be ready to go. I mean, that could be something we could do too. I mean, we can't vote on anything tonight anyway, but
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, ultimately, none of us are microbiologists. We interpret data that's
you
presented to
do, you
us,
just kind of,
and we make our
Right.
own opinions and decisions based on that. However, I think in just with the general idea of public safety, that's ultimately why I feel the way I feel. I
Right.
mean, we find people for not wearing their seatbelt, and ultimately that offense doesn't hurt anyone but yourself. So, I mean, I don't care. Kind of, if someone wants to come in here and fight it, and then we have to deal with that. I mean, it's all part of the game. It's what everyone's been doing for 18 months at this point. Like, it is what it is. And I want to be done with it. I want to get over with it. But ultimately, I don't think it's ever going to be over until more people are vaccinated.
that's exactly right.
You go to the doctor's office, you don't question it. Walk right in. You have a
Well, you've
mask.
got immune compromised people in there, they're sick. I mean, I think that's totally different. Just like I'm all for the schools because certain age groups are not able to get vaccinated yet, so they should be masked up. We're all adults. We should be vaccinated. And if you're not,
And that's the bottom line is we need to be advocating for people to
get
get
vaccinated.
vaccinated. You know, we see what's happening around the country, around the whole world, where undeveloped countries would do anything to get this vaccine. And we have people here who refuse to get it. So we get vaccines for everything else. Our kids are required to get vaccines for everything else. My problem with this ordinance is that we are not all on the same page. The court has issued an order requiring the public. However, the court has exempted court personnel from wearing a mask if they're vaccinated. The administration has required all outlying employees to require a mask. So we are in conflict. So we have this time that this ordinance is being moved to second reading. We have Mr. God's amendment that he has put forward. So during that time, I would like to get everybody on the same page with some type of consultation between the courts, us, and the administration, so we can move forward in the proper manner.
I think it's really important to note that my order to employees is different. We have an affirmative obligation as an employer to protect our employees and to make sure that our employees, if they are or would happen to be unvaccinated, aren't infecting other people. So we have a different standard than somebody, a constituent or resident walking into City Hall has. They have it's a different standard. We as an employer have a higher exposure of not taking basic precautions and safeties for our employees.
So Kyle, hypothetically, we enact an ordinance where we require it, and it's a minor misdemeanor. Say I don't obey it, and you fine me $100. You give me a citation, correct?
That's would be my recommendation.
I don't show up for court. What happens then? I don't believe in it.
With anyone that doesn't show up for court, there's a KPS center.
Correct.
And
There's a KP, so there's a warrant. So you go to jail. We're talking about jailing people for a mask.
actually talking about jailing people for not obeying a court order.
We're not talking about the court. We're talking about us in City Hall.
When you get.
This is not a
issued
court order.
citation,
This is an ordinance.
when you're issued a citation and you fail.
I understand what that happens.
show
That's
up,
what I'm saying.
then
So potentially people could be jailed for not wearing a mask because of an ordinance such as this.
Potentially, they could be
Potentially,
jailed
yes.
for not coming to court to answer a complaint.
Correct.
That's why they would be jailed, not because they didn't wear. a
Because
mask.
there would be a warrant as a result of
The
not
court
wearing
would
a
issue
mask.
warrant.
It's
Because
it's
they
all it's all related.
didn't come to court.
It's all related. So for not wearing a mask, you didn't come to court, 'cause you don't believe in it, and you can be jailed for that. So basically, you're being jailed for a mask.
No, I think you've oversimplified it.
No, I think I simplified it plenty. I think the issue is that the bottom line is, I understand you're not appearing for your court, and all those things can happen, just like with a speeding ticket. Same thing, you're still appearing in court for a speeding ticket. Same thing. That's what I think is where we don't want to go down that road. That's my whole point.
And I
Having
just think
enforced the law for
exception-
36 years, more so than anybody in this room, it's not a good thing.
What would happen if we didn't, because they've already enacted these things here. What if we didn't do anything, didn't pass an ordinance and that sign stays up there and stuff? So
And I think we said that.
I
That would
said
be
that,
fine
like,
too,
so
yeah.
let's not do any, like, what if we don't do anything? What if we don't pass anything? I mean, it seems
Yeah.
like they've already done what they want to do, like, so,
I'm not prepared to give legal opinions in a public meeting. I'll be happy to send you
I would love the public to weigh in on this and guide
then
us.
it's not a legal question.
I guess I'm just saying, and Jim too, like, so we brought this up sort of after the fact, and it's like, what if we don't do anything? So,
I mean, people will make their own choice. I mean, the only reason why the sign isn't modified is the sign we owned, right? So if the courts are requiring it and the judge has the right to require whatever he wants in his courtroom,
right.
Well, I also don't want us to confuse the fact that the judge only controls the courtroom. We'll take the county, for instance, there's only 2 courts that'll require a mask. One is probate and the other is Judge Zizon. That's it. Again, the court security personnel address that by which court are you going to? Judge Zizon? Okay, she's going to require a mask. Okay, if one's not there, we provide it. Same with probate court, but that's it for any other office in the county or any other building in the county. So that's just an example. I'm just putting that out as an example. So I think we focus too much, well, court's doing this, so we need to do this. That's not true. So the court has its own set of rules that they want to go by, which the judge can hold somebody in contempt for violating his order. I get that. My whole issue with the mandatory mask is enforcement. I just don't agree with it. I think it's wrong. And I think the public would be behind me on that.
And again, like I said, the current order as it stands from the court is in conflict with the administration's order for employees. So that's something that needs to be addressed. And as far as people's rights to, in fact, wear a mask, that is not precluded. If somebody wants to wear a mask, they most certainly can wear a mask.
Right. I mean, you're not
So,
saying you can't
Right,
enter the,
exactly.
Yeah.
We're not saying you don't have to wear a mask. They have the right to wear a mask if they feel that they are compromised or they would compromise somebody else. So, but I agree with Kyle. We've debated this enough in the public realm. We should ponder this as it goes into second reading and be prepared the next time we meet to discuss which way we're going with it. So with that, ordinance 8621 is moved to a second reading. Move on to ordinance 8721.
An ordinance authorizing the finance director to certify a list of delinquent water and sewer bills to the Asheville County Auditor for real estate assessment and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Williams.
Every year we have a certain number of individuals that don't pay their water and sewer bills. If they don't, we certify them as an assessment on that property. Right now, we have about $1,204 worth of water bills and about a little over $1,200 in sewer bills that need to be assessed. The only issue with this one is in order to get on the tax rolls for 2022, it has to be certified to the county by the second Monday in September, which is today. But Mr. Smith has said that they
In
may give us,
October. You said October?
no, September.
September. okay.
Sorry. If I said October, I meant September. The second Monday in September. But Mr. Smith has said that they may give us a little bit of
Some
discretion there.
Flexibility.
Yeah. So we're hoping that's the case because this can't be passed tonight. So
It should
I
be
mean, it's
passed
on-
no later than the next meeting.
Any questions or comments regarding ordinance 8721? Okay, this ordinance moved to second reading as well. Move on to ordinance 8821.
An ordinance to create Fund 380 TID grant for the purpose of accounting for the receipts and disbursements related to the Transportation Improvement District grant.
Mr. Hawk.
This is related to a grant that we've had sitting around for about 8 months. This is the preliminary engineering and design for the rework of the intersection of Thompson Innovation and Route 20, including traffic analysis to support an industrial project in the industrial park, as well as the Port Connector grant. So this is kind of a preliminary grant to support that. It only pays for engineering costs and represents 100% of the preliminary engineering costs with that project. So this just allocates it. Now, technically, we are a grant subrecipient. The Transportation Improvement District of Ashtabula County is the grant recipient, and we are the subrecipient. So we'll work on a reimbursement basis through the Transportation Improvement District.
Okay, any questions regarding ordinance 8821? Okay, ordinance 8821 be moved to second reading. Move on to ordinance 8921.
An ordinance authorizing the finance director to certify a list of delinquent grass cutting bills to the county for real estate assessment pursuant to section 731.54 of the Ohio Revised Code and section 1377.07 of the codified ordinances of the city of Conneaut and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Williams.
Yeah, this is similar to the water and sewer. It's just for people that don't mow their grass and we have to go in there and cut it or pay a company to do so. And then we charge them and assess it to the property.
Okay, any questions or comments regarding this ordinance? Okay, ordinance 8921 be moved to second reading. That concludes our ordinances and resolutions for this evening. Move on
Sure,
to,
Carol.
yes,
Two things. One is that I also had an opportunity to review Judge Arochi's order. And to my knowledge, he did not exempt court employees from that order. I don't have it in front of me. I was prepared to discuss it, but I just wanted to indicate that may be that the court employees may not be exempted. And I just asked that. The second thing, I hesitate to bring this up, but on that resolution, there was an amendment offered by Mr. Dow, which was in order. I don't know that there was a second. If there was a second, then there should be a vote on that amendment. It's not going to, it'll push it back to a first reading at the next time. You still need to have a majority of council pass an ordinance, but there's no requirement that an amendment can be made and pass with less than a majority. So I would suggest to you that if there wasn't, if Mr. God made an amendment, a motion for amendment, I'm not sure I heard a second.
found Mr. Emery.
There's an agreement, yeah.
Okay,
I didn't say the second though. I
No.
didn't say the actual word, so. Can I say second now?
I think that was your intent, and I think it would be appropriate if there's been a motion and a second that amendment should be voted on. It's not going to be enacted. It still needs to be enacted by a majority of council, but I think an amendment can be made without having a majority of council present. Or, excuse me, without having a majority of council voting for that particular amendment. Does that make sense?
Okay, so we have order.
So going back to this ordinance, it would be my recommendation to the council that since there's been a motion and a second to amend the ordinance by requiring a mask of anyone entering into Village Hall or City Hall, that vote be taken.
And we have two people who are absent,
Right.
so they will
And
not
that's
have the
okay.
chance to vote on the amendment.
Again, all it takes to vote on any motion is a majority of council being present, which a quorum is present. To pass an ordinance, which is not what we're doing here,
Yeah, this is an ordinance.
No, we're not passing the ordinance. We're
It's just getting
it's
it
making an
ready.
amendment.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's the distinction
Gotcha.
that I was all slow in
There's an
coming up.
amendment. Okay, gotcha.
But
So it's
I
like
think
just
that amendment needs to be
ready
voted
in
upon.
case.
I look and I see ordinance.
And you can,
Yeah.
if council changes next, they can do that too, or they can withdraw their motion and wait for everyone to show up before they do that, since it's got to go into a second reading anyway. But those are the options that are available, I think. And I apologize for not speaking sooner on it.
Okay, so we will go back to ordinance 8621, which has a motion for amendment to require mass. Correct, Mr. Goff?
That is correct.
Which has been seconded by Mr. Emery. Mrs. McConnell?
Mr. Arcaro,
No.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
No.
3-2.
Then the motion would pass for the amendment. If something changes, if I find something else different before the next meeting, I'll let you know. But it'll go back to first reading at the next council meeting.
Okay.
So
So
So this is just for us
ordinance
to talk about
Mm-mm.
this.
No,
Yes, it is.
8621 will be moved to a first read.
What's the first reading?
But I mean,
Oh, I see.
we still have to vote on that. That's,
Okay. Again, that concludes our ordinances and resolutions for this evening. Any other miscellaneous business? We'll need a, if somebody would like to make a motion to excuse Mr. Kozeski, who had a doctor's appointment.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Kozeski is excused. If somebody would like to make a motion to excuse Mrs. McVoy, who had a meeting in Cleveland.
I'll make a motion.
For a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Hey, Mrs. McVoy is excused. Any other miscellaneous business?
Council President Arcaro, can I make one recommendation as regarding to calendar? If we made the 20th, which is typically not a meeting, a special session of council this next Monday, we could clear kind of the docket of some of the more urgent ordinances that we need to dispose of. If we did that, we would probably be able to cancel the 27th because we're also going to have that special board meeting, council meeting on the 29th. So that'd make 2 meetings that week. But if we're able to meet on the 20th, we really won't have much to meet about on the 27th. Does that make sense?
You mean a special meeting what day?
Yeah, a special meeting Monday, the 20th instead of the 27th.
I was just, because I'm going to be in Georgia. I'm trying to think of the date. That's the 22nd.
Yeah, it's
23rd. So
Monday.
I should be good.
Next Monday,
Next Monday.
How come I can remember that?
the
Well,
20th,
Yeah, it would be a special meeting.
7 o'clock. Are we doing earlier?
Doesn't matter. to me.
You want to do like 5:30 or 6?
6 o'clock.
Okay.
So, Mr. Smith, with the requirement to have 2 regular meetings, would that supersede the requirement of having 2 regular meetings with the 20th being a special meeting.
I'd have to look at the charter. I don't have that
Okay,
answer for you right now.
if you could look into that
Sure.
for an answer on the 20th.
That's all I have for you.
Okay, thank you. Any other miscellaneous business? Okay, if not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Second.
Here, who made the motion? I'm sorry.
Mr. Moser made the motion,
Thank you.
second by Mr. Emery.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
A city council for September 13, 2021 is adjourned. Thank you. I don't-